all, the tri-wing plane was far superior to Allied planes at that point in the war, about 1915 to 1916, in its maneuverability. They were also the first ones to fix machine guns into play with the MG-08 air-cooled versions. So what you're witnessing now is an artillery barrage on trench position. Artillery barrages were conducted almost daily. Part of that was just the mental, psychological piece of it. Before helmets were introduced, it was actually determined that most of the casualties in World War I were shrapnel casualties as head wounds from exploding artillery. That's why they came up with these. And consequently, why they don't really do much to protect the rest of your head, they're really just a tin hat to protect you from shrapnel at this point. But artillery barrages were conducted daily on German positions. At the Battle of the Somme in 1916, the British dropped over 1 million rounds of artillery on the Germans. They told their soldiers that they could sling their rifles, light their pipes, and jaunt across the field. But that didn't happen because the Germans were so deep into the ground that the artillery was basically useless. The Battle of Passchendaele, they tried it again, another 1 million rounds of ammunition. So if you can imagine being in an artillery barrage that big. But today, as in many days, when the artillery fell silent, the men went over the top. So again, part of it was the psychological effect. The other part of it was you never really knew if there was going to be an attack after an artillery barrage. One final thing to note is that by the end of the war, the artillery had coordinated so closely with the infantry, they were able to do what is called walking fire. And they're able to basically drop the artillery shells right in front of the infantry as they're advancing across the field, and walk that barrage right up to the trench line, so that the troops are under cover of either artillery rounds and smoke rounds almost until the last second. It required very close coordination, because obviously if you fired too short, you would be dropping your own and then you had to stop once they were ready to assault the trench. But that was a development in the Post-World War. That's how good artillery got, and was used subsequently in World War II and beyond. So really quickly to answer your question, trenches were used about 1915, and we'll continue to see use until the end of the war, but they reached their height in 1915, 1916. That was because the war was very mobile in the first few months, but as the British got pushed back, they were a small professional army, and they were getting pushed overwhelming numbers. As well. Standard practice was to dig in at that point. And so it was just kind of standard practice. They were overwhelmed. They were waiting for reinforcements to land it. They started to dig in. They thought they were going to be there for a few months. It turned out to be several years of trench warfare, simply because the technology had advanced to the point that once you created that stalemate, it was almost impossible to get out of it. Like I said, trenches were used up until the very end of the war, but by 1917, the tanks and it was possible to break the trench systems, try to get more fluid. But it was really just a product that was standard practice, and then if they did it, they couldn't get out. They would, or you would basically dig the trench from the trench. So once you started the trench, you would continue to expand it from inside the trench. You'll see a lot of sandbag trenches. That's because in Flanders, the water table is very below the ground. So you dig down the trench, you build it up. You'll see German trenches, of course, that are concrete. By the end of the war, concrete bunker systems, very similar to what you'll see in World War II. Sophisticated, because as the Germans really realized that they were going to be there for a long time, they started digging or building more defensive strong points. The Americans and the British really never did that, because the idea was, that we would continue to advance and take the next trench and continue this mobility. So they were easily constructed, some of them with wood, but a lot of them just dug and never reinforced, and constantly filled with water and trench foot and all the other fun things. you have a question? So in World War I, the majority of it is being moved by horses. For every man in the field, there's like approximately 3 or 4 horses that are supporting them. Wagon trains, things like that. But trucks are also coming in at this point in time. So all of the stuff's being moved by truck or railway, another thing, but also horses as well. You can see the German medic treating him on the field. Medics were, the Geneva Conventions had not really yet been written as we know them today. They did exist, but the Hague Conventions allowed for that. The Red Cross became the international symbol of medics. They weren't supposed to be, they did not say it didn't happen. You'll notice the French at the far end and the horizon blue uniforms. That was because the clay and flame was blue, so it actually blended in better than green uniforms. Right after that. The German side is a Maxim machine gun, but they're heavily used by both sides, of course, at this time. Both water-cooled guns at this point. Are equipped with machine guns, so they can still shoot. They were also dropping grenades, early versions of bombs, even darts, just solid steel darts. To answer your question. So the 1917 water-cooled Browning gun here, which as we said is an American iteration of the machine gun that came out in 1917, is right here. But you'll also notice the gentleman out here in the foxhole has a Browning automatic rifle or BAR. Still used in the Second World War, but sort of a lighter version of a machine gun that was more portable at this point in time. The British had a similar variation of the Lewis gun, but machine guns were becoming a more popular thing at this point in time. French with the show shot, or show. You'll also notice as contrast to the film, you see more small SWAT. German aircraft circling back there. There might be a dogfight shortly. Signalers are laying telephone cable across the field. The radios were very primitive. They did use field phones, telephones in the field. The problem is that when the Germans, as they probably will do, or would have done, would barrage this area with artillery, that cable is very susceptible. So you more primitive There's the German plane that just flew by right here. Meanwhile, the Americans are getting ready to take the trench. Their final push. They're going to clear the trench and, of course, continue fighting, but their main objective at this point is prisoners. Because if they can get prisoners, they can get information out of them. Whether that's troop strengths, whether that's counterattacks, future battle plans, etc. You also have to realize that this is not necessarily one trench. It is for the purposes of the scale of our battlefield. But there would have been communication trenches and reserve trenches behind that, so it would have actually been typically 3 lines of trenches. The Germans would have retreated to the second line of trenches, probably launched a counterattack to try and take this back, which again contributed to that seesaw back and forth action that we saw so often during the war. Looks like they are coming back this way, but it looks like they are in a dogfight right now. So as they continue to mop up and you guys continue to watch the dogfight, just a few things to note about your day. First of all, do make it inside the museum. Of course, the museum is the reason we're here. The reenactors are here. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for the museum inviting us to come. But if you like what you see and you want to see this continue, do consider donating to the museum. Do consider buying an annual membership if you plan on coming back to any of the other events that we do this year. Because especially this weekend with hotels and the eclipse and everything, we're spending a lot of money to be out here. The museum's spending a lot of money to host the event. And so just take the time to thank them for everything that the reenactors at the museum have done out here, nothing else. Do come back to our event in May and September. We we'll have a World War II event in May, first weekend of May. Labor Day weekend, we have a World War II event, and then there will be a Vietnam event over the summer. We are actually raising money right now for a new edition expansion. We're raising money right now for a new edition expansion of the museum. So we can come back in the fall. Here with his BAR firing back. You're laughing, but that was actually the most effective means of anti-aircraft guns that they had at this time. Maxim did develop a 2-pound pom-pom gun, which fired an early flat projectile, but they weren't very common. Machine guns were a common way of firing back, even rifle fire. You got to realize these planes are canvas. They're wooden canvas, so bullets going to rip through that if it hits anything vital, any of the cables or anything that's on the plane, or even the pilot. It could actually bring it to the ground. You'll see later on variations of machine guns that were designed with stands, very similar to this Maxim, where it sits up in the air with sights that were designed to shoot at airplanes. But early in the war, you'll even see pictures of the British strapping Vickers guns to overturn wagons and wagon wheels so that it can rotate 360 degrees and still point up in the air. How come the machine gun position is so exposed? Well, that actually plays into what we were just talking about with the fact that it's up in the air to shoot at artillery, or excuse me, not artillery, aircraft. So that's why it's up on the tripod, otherwise it would be down in the sandbag position. The Germans and the Americans less so, but the British actually used machine guns in an indirect fire role. So they had what was called a clinometer, and it would allow you to lob machine gun rounds into a target very similar to an artillery piece. So you could actually sit behind the lines with machine guns and keep an area covered with machine gun fire. Well, because, so those machine guns in the airplane, the machine guns that are in the airplane have a limited amount of ammo. First of all, they're limited to the amount of ammo that they can carry, both because of the size and weight of the plane, but also they're limited because they can't really reload those guns. The pilots themselves can't really reload those guns very easily. So they don't shoot all of the time, because they don't want to expend that ammo. They probably only have about 250 rounds or maybe even 500 rounds of ammunition in their guns, linked together in belts. And so they're really only going to shoot when they have a perfect view of the target so that they don't waste that ammunition.